Good morning. Welcome to Komodo Art Soaps. I'm Liz. I recently made a giant batch of soap. It was about 15 and a half pounds of soap in order to make several different batches of soap. So I made 2 essential oil soaps and 1 large landscape soap, which y'all saw just totally fritzed because of the discoloration of the fragrance oil. But right before I made that landscape soap, I found myself with a little extra batter, and I decided to make a lazy man's version of soap dough. I had run out of containers in order to mix and color and all that stuff, so I decided to mix it straight up in the mold, and it worked. So I thought I would share this with you in case any of you find yourself in the same situation. Hope you enjoy. So this is going to be my last batch of soap. But these were what was left in my container, so I'm going to just make some soap dough for future use. I've never done it this way before, but this is desperation because I'm running out of containers. So instead of putting in a container to blend it, I'm putting it straight into the mold to color it. And with soap dough, I'm not as particular about the amounts of mica that I use because embeds are so small. So it's not as if you're over coloring an entire loaf of soap. So with embeds, I try to go a little bit stronger on the colorants. And these are neons, and neons are not going to mix very well. I've mislaid my mini mixer as well, so we're just doing it by hand, but that's okay because with soap dough, once this sets, I am going to knead it like crazy. And by knead it, I mean I'm going to smash it and mix it and just completely smush it all together. So any little lumps of coloring that don't get fully incorporated in, they will definitely get incorporated in there when I do it. But that doesn't mean I want to be lazy about it. I'm still going to smush the colorant along the side and try to get it as fully incorporated as I can. And I'm taking time to do this simply because my colorant for this next soap, it's a landscape soap, so it's okay if it's thick. I actually want it to set up just a little bit. But I'm going to mix these all together. And then what I will do is cover them with saran wrap so that no air can touch them. And by doing that, I prevent soda ash, but I also prevent evaporation. I don't want any of my liquid to evaporate from this soap, because the liquid is what's going to keep it pliable so that I can use it very much like modeling clay or Play-Doh. And I actually have a big project planned for these that I'm not going to tell you about right now because I've been planning this soap for over a year and a half and I still haven't made it because it's going to require a lot of steps and I just have not had the gusto to do it lately. But I'm feeling it now. I'm feeling like it's time. We got to make this happen. So you will see that down the road. But I'm going to stop the camera now because I'm going to do a little bit more mixing with these and then I'll cover them up and set them aside, but I will show you when I unmold them. All right, here we are with our soap dough bar. As you can see, I did not mix the color in all the way, so it's all sorts of gradients, but we are going to start smushing and see if we can get a uniform color. So we're just going to break off small pieces like this. The smaller the piece, the easier it is to handle. Too thick and it's really hard to squish, and you really need to get each piece squished. I mean, you'll think you're getting it squished and then you'll feel little hard bits in there, and every hard bit has to be squished. The reason why, let me see if I can explain this. Soap dough is bar soap that still has the full water content in it. And what you're doing by smushing it is disrupting the crystal formation. So a hard bar of soap has a crystal structure to it because soap is a salt. And when you're doing soap dough, you're disrupting that. And all the water is still in here. We keep it fully wrapped from the time I pour it in the mold till the time I put it into a soap project. I will keep this completely wrapped up. But by doing that, you get this squishy substance. Now, if I leave this out to dry, it will harden just like this, okay? Now look at that. We went from a piece of this, which was, so this is mottled. You've got the uncolored soap, the colored soap, and then you've got the specks of pigment in there that haven't been fully incorporated. And I've been able to prove that you can get it fully incorporated during the kneading process. This makes it much easier to mix in colors, for me anyway, to just mix the colors right in the mold. Saves you a dish or two, and I really like that. So it's really, you really have to be super thorough. There's that chunk of pigment that was in there. You want to get that fully incorporated. So we're just gonna smush and smush and smush until you don't see any color streaking, because if you see the color streaking, then you don't have an even texture throughout the soap. And then we will just add it together. You'll have some darker bits and light bits, which again, you want to just knead it together until it's one uniform color. Unless you're going for a mottled look or a look with striations in it. The problem with doing bigger chunks, this big or bigger, I mean, you could try to smash this whole bar. I've tried to do that before. The problem that I find with doing that is it actually takes longer, not just because the chunk is bigger, but because you end up with too much soft dough around the little hard chunks, and it gets really hard to get the little hard chunks to stay in between your fingers so that you can smush them. So if you try to do a large chunk to try to speed it up, you end up with really lumpy, clumpy dough instead of nice, soft dough. Now this chunk isn't too bad. I think I can get most of them out, but it definitely takes more. You kind of have to feel around and find those little chunks. Whereas if it's just a small little blob, it's much easier to just get those all smoothed out really quick and move on to the next little bit. So I know sometimes it can feel time consuming. It is, but it's an artistic labor of love. So it's something we do for fun and for aesthetics and for artistic expression. So it's kind of worth doing, I think. And you just put something fun on your headphones, and audiobooks, some really good music. I watch a lot of Judge Judy when I'm doing this because, you know, Judge Judy, you don't have to really watch it. You can just listen to it. All right, I'm going to finish kneading this all up, and I'll come back and show you my big blob when I'm done. All right, here's some soap dough that we have. This soap dough was made a while ago, and it just got to be too hard, and so I unwrapped it and let it harden. So it is like, you can't do anything to it with it. It is a solid, rock hard bar of soap now. This is soap dough that was made with the same batch, but this is about 3 days old after smushing. So it's firm, but I can squish it, okay? But it's firm. This is soap dough that I just finished smushing, and it's really soft, like super easy to smush. So it's very much like Fimo clay in the fact that you have to squish it to make it malleable. The longer it sits, the harder it will be. But eventually you get to the point where it's so hard you really can't do anything with it. Because it's soap. This is just a regular bar of soap. The only difference is that these contain their full water content. Now, my soap dough is really hard. I wouldn't give my recipe to anyone because it's not a good soap dough recipe in the fact that it's not super malleable. So mine's a little more difficult to work with, and that's because I use my regular soap recipe. I don't increase the water. I use a heavy water discount, which makes it harder to work with. And it has all my additives and everything in it, and it often has fragrance in it. These two don't have fragrance. This one does. So I'm not going to share my recipe because it's not a good soap dough recipe. I'll leave a few links down below where you can find good soap dough recipes. But it's definitely fun to play with. It's fun to create little things out of them. You know, like I created these little trees out of some soap dough. And, you know, I've created little soap pearls. I've created mermaid tails. I've created wax seals. I've done all sorts of stuff with soap dough. So it's definitely fun to have on hand. And it's fun to play with. But it's not like a quick and easy way to make soap. So it's something you gotta really love to do because it's a lot of squishing, okay? I hope you enjoyed watching me make soap dough, and stick around and see what I do with these. This one I'm just putting in my shower.